The last type of bad trip that I could think of would be a bummer on the come down. So, for me, the come down starts about 6 hours after eating the LSD. The effects of LSD wear off very gradually, which some have found to be disconcerting. On 100 micrograms of LSD, you should expect closed-eye visuals for up to 12 and a half hours after ingestion, progressively becoming dimmer and grayer. After effects can last up to 24 hours after eating. Now, I think that the reason that I become unhappy on the come down is my understanding is there's a decrease in serotonin in the brain as a result of LSD mimicking serotonin. To my understanding, LSD come down is less than an ecstasy come down, which is less than an amphetamine come down. I only took ecstasy once over 25 years ago, and I do not remember the come down. I've never taken amphetamine, so I don't really mind the LSD come down. I'm used to it. I do have to say, whenever I'm thinking about tripping, it is the come down that I think about. I know that I have to accept all the risks of taking LSD, but it's really the come down that is keeping me away from it. Now, I do like to trip hard, and I think when you're somebody that likes to trip hard, you don't really think about bad trips. But there's one thing that I have heard about LSD is that you can have a bad trip at any time. So I think that I can see that as being a possibility, because it has done some frightening stuff. One time, I became very confused when I was on LSD, and I was felt overwhelmed by a feeling of dread, but there weren't any thoughts behind it. It's just pure emotion. So I was like stumbling around trying to understand what was going on. And then it went away. But I have noticed that that is a normal part of a trip for me, it seems. I do have this feeling that comes over me. It does seem to be a pattern. It happens once per trip. It doesn't last long. It's only in the 1 to 3 minute range. I would say it's something similar to if you stub your toe, you don't have to yell. You don't be quiet, but it's more difficult not to yell. It's easier to yell. So for me, when this feeling starts to come over me, I could just lie there and not react, but it is easier for me. And what I do is I start going like, and I'm not crying, but I think part of it is that I haven't been able to cry as an adult. I've often felt like I'd probably feel better if I just would cry, but I find it to be fairly interesting. If I got stuck there, then I just figure that I'd have to wait for it to wear off, and everything would probably be okay. So, I am a little bit leery of LSD. And whenever I take it, I feel nervous. And I think it's only natural to feel nervous if you're going to take LSD. I haven't really had any problems with it myself. The stuff that I've guided myself away from, most of the time, it didn't come back. That was the one exception I just gave, the feeling of dread. But the other stuff that has frightened me and that I guided myself away from didn't come back, and it was actually quite interesting. And afterwards I was like, okay, let's see if that's going to happen again. And it hasn't. So your first trips on LSD are the most visual ones. The visuals do seem to die down as time goes on, so you develop a tolerance. So you should try not to be frightened of stuff, like closed eye visuals or something. They can't really hurt you when you think about it, you know. It's just something interesting. Now, another thing I think about when I'm considering tripping is the fact that LSD does cause sleeplessness, and I do tend to take a lot. So for me, I know I can't go to sleep for 18 and a half hours after I eat 500 micrograms of LSD. Now, one important thing to keep in mind with LSD is the dosage range is 100 to 500 micrograms, according to Wikipedia. And I've heard something like that myself, other places. I've heard also 600 as being the upper range. Now, it is not that if you take more than that, you're going to have, definitely going to have a problem. Really what it's about is the law of diminishing returns sets in, so that you just can't, taking more really doesn't have that much of an effect on you. It doesn't make you trip that much harder. So like somewhere around 500, 600 is probably the maximum that you really would ever need to take. But the thing that you have to keep in mind is that in that range, it's not like marijuana. It wouldn't be like the difference between, let's say if we're talking 100 to 500 microgram range, it's not like the difference between one bong hit, 2 bong hits, 3 bong hits. It's not like that. It's not just more of the same when you up the dosage of LSD. Different things can start happening. Okay. One reason that in the 60s and 70s that there were probably a lot of bad trips were caused by dosages that were maybe 250 micrograms or 350 micrograms, I've heard of, which is too much for your first trip. So I think the introductory level is 100 micrograms. So you want to be really careful about the dosage. You don't want to exceed that dosage for the first time taking LSD. If you do want to take more, I would recommend only going up 50 micrograms per trip. So your second trip could be 150 micrograms at most. Just have to really caution people about that. It does take 45 minutes to start working, so you shouldn't get impatient and take more. Once you take 100 micrograms, then you just wait. See how the trip is. You'll be able to go to sleep maybe 12 and a half hours after you eat it. So don't up the dosage during the trip.